So we're doing this wargaming thing, and the question is, which dice are best? We've got the rules, we've got the narrative, we've got the tactics, but that's just a simulation. The dice interject a little bit of random. They represent the fog of war. They represent in that moment when that tank is heading down at you and you have one shot with that anti-tank weapon, taking into account the weather, morale, psychology, the armor of the tank, what type of tank it is. You say, well, I need a 5 or higher to hit you. You roll that dice and you see what happens. And certainly within that, there are modifiers. And we've talked about whatever wargaming system that you're playing, the primary tactica is to try and control the random of the dice. If we're looking at a D6, you've got 1 to 6 base mechanics. You need to stack that. If I need to hit you with a 4 or higher, I want to get a +1 to that dice roll or a +2. Likewise, if I'm using that D6 for some sort of armor blocking, I want a +1 or a +2, or I should say a -1 or a -2, depending on the system. What can you do to modify the dice to control it? But in exploring this, the big question with the fog of war is, can I make happen what I want to happen? And the main way to do this is volume of dice. And before we jump in, we're just doing a little bit of tactica frameworking here for those of you new to wargaming or exploring these fundamental tactics. We're going to explore D6, D8, D10, and custom dice. Looking at this idea, what offers the best flexibility in a rule set, but as a player, tactically what offers the easiest possible manipulation. So in exploring this, I want to make something happen regardless of the system, regardless of the dice modifiers, regardless of the dice type. The more dice you roll, the more chances of having something happen, whether it's a probability or whether it's just an absolute long shot. We see this in games where possibly if I'm playing a space-based game and I have a ship that can shoot out 3 dice and you have a ship that can shoot out 2 dice, but it's twice the damage rating because it's just like a heavy laser, I'll take multiple ships with the 3 dice because I've just got to hit you first. Then we'll worry about damage. I'll spam out multiple dice, building dice pools. And we've explored this tactica. I've pushed up to the channel under the Wargaming Tactics playlist, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Fundamentals of Wargaming. So now that we've got that framework, let's look at a D6. In my opinion, D6 is easily understood. It's kind of the old school wargaming dice, the go-to die. The legacy of certain systems like Warhammer 40,000 and DBA, DBN, other systems of the time that, although some of these systems are 20, 30, 40 years old, something crazy like that at this point, the DNA, the genesis, the engine is a D6, and that only gives you a 1 to 6 possibility. Now, we do see this concept of exploding D6s, where if you roll a 6, you get to roll another D6. And then if that gets a 6, depending on the rule set, you get to continue exploding or not. So this idea of the core is a primary D6, but it breaks out to possibly generate more D6. That's an interesting way to boost different dice mechanics, but not rewrite your rule set. An idea would be like if I'm an infantry and I need a 7 or higher on a D6 to damage a tank. Well, if I'm rolling a normal D6, I'm never going to achieve that. I'm going to have to rely on that exploding D6, rolling that 6. So it's a way for these legacy systems with exploding dice to keep that system going as they add on more vehicles, more things, and the rule set expands. But this is the easiest, and this is not a criticism. I enjoy a lot of D6-based systems, and those are the primary systems that I play. But it's understanding that mechanic because we want to build dice pools. We want to have tactica. We want to try and win these games. So when we're exploring that, this idea with a D6 mechanic, if you get a +1 to hit, whether you hit on a 3, a 4, or a 5 higher based on the quality of the unit shooting, that's massive. So I'm looking, how can I get any type of plus when it's my turn? When it's my opponent's turn on the opposite side, I'm looking for minuses to them. If they need a 4 or higher to hit, but I'm in a heavy bunker and they've got a -1 or a -2, that's massive because you only have a 1 to 6 variable. So absolutely looking for those variables. Now when we move to a D8, we're gaining 2 more. And this offers a little bit more flexibility because you can certainly now limit it to 1 to 6 for certain things, 7, 8 to others. It allows you to build in a bigger variety of weapons. And I would say in terms of modern wargaming, systems that are D8 based should be the absolute bare minimum, because it's going to give you enough tactical flexibility with different units, and expanding from a D6, 1 to 6 to 1 to 8, that offers a lot more flexibility. So now what we see here is, yes, I still want to develop those systems where I'm going to get a +1 or a +2 or a -1 or a -2. But now the possibility for generating a 7 or an 8, like if I have a weapon system that it's like, well, you need an 8 to hit, the fact that that has been increased possibility on that die, rolling it without having to add modifiers, that makes those vehicles or those units susceptible to that, open to volume of dice. So we've got that D8. D10 is where I see a lot of systems now, kind of modern wargaming systems, designing themselves. A D10 offers maximum flexibility. You've got 1 in 10 possibilities. Modifiers are now spread out. So if I'm playing a D6 based system, I'm going to spam a lot of D6 and I'm going to spam a lot of +1 modifiers at a minimum. Whatever I got to do, synergies, cover, that still exists in a D10 based war game, but the effects are spread out a little bit more. It's not going to be as swingy. It's going to have to shift more to, Fritz, you have this possibility. You can do it with the D10, but don't rely on volume of dice, even though we're going to stack volume of dice. Don't rely on the lucky roll. Of course, in that moment, I'm going to pause and pray to the dice gods and do what I have to do, but utilize good tactics as opposed to certain fundamentals. A D10 system offers the best flexibility. Now, do you move to 2D10? That's kind of a different story. That might be a little too much. But we've got D6, we've got D8, we've got D10, and the patch on the D6 system is this idea of an exploding die. You roll a 6, you get to roll it again. In your wargaming system, out of curiosity, in the comments, what system are you playing, and what dice-based mechanic does it use?